Welcome, 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 and thank you for having woken up so early just for the European family of Jones. I really appreciate it. We owe you.
My pleasure, Luigi. It's a pleasure to be with you.
Thank you. So, do you have PowerPoint to show, or do you want to explain what the benefits behind the Revita Blu?
Yes, I do not have a PowerPoint right now. Again, I apologize. I'm traveling in Japan. The schedule is fairly tight, but I think I can just share with you, just like this, off the cuff, what Revita Blu is. Revita Blu is really all about stem cells. It is the result of about 18 years of research in the field of stem cell research. I started working on various ingredients that are in Revita Blu. I say 18 years ago. Actually, the research started in 1994, so almost, 25 years ago. To understand really the impact of Revita Blu as a product, we can just take one step back and just think about when scientists work on stem cells, everything that you hear about stem cells, it always refers to the enormous regenerative potential that adult stem cells can have. And that's why there's so much attention about stem cells. So, but the thing that we rarely talk about is that these stem cells that have such enormous regenerative potential, well, they are in our body. As we are listening right now, as we're sitting, from the day we are born until the day we die, these stem cells are in our body. They are in our bloodstream, they are in our bone marrow, they are in virtually every organ in tissue of the body. So if they have such potential, then the big question is, what do they do naturally in the body? And when we understand this, then I think we clearly understand that this is not only changing the way that we view health and wellness, but I believe that it's called to change the way that we even practice medicine. But we will come to that a little bit later. So Revita Blu is all about stem cells. So to understand what Revita Blu does, it is important first to define and have a clear definition or understanding of what a stem cell is. And the best way to define a stem cell is probably to talk about what is not a stem cell, because all the cells of the body are not stem cells, meaning aside from stem cells, all the rest are called somatic cells. They are specialized cells. They do one specific thing. They will never transform. They will never do anything else. They will never really multiply. Like a cell of your pancreas will make insulin. A cell of your heart will contract. A cell of your retina will respond to light, and so on. They do one thing. They will never transform. And at the end of the spectrum, at the other end, we have stem cells. Stem cells are, from a functional standpoint, they are nothing. They don't do anything. What they do is it rests in their ability to transform into a somatic cell, and they can become something else. And historically, they were becoming blood cells, red blood cells, white blood cells, platelets, and that was their limitation. So they have been known for a long time. You know, anybody that who went to med school, what we are taught is that stem cells are the precursors to blood cells. So the big breakthrough in science is when, in the early 2000s, scientists started to observe that stem cells that indeed are capable of becoming blood cells were also able to become cells of other tissues. Cells of the heart, of the liver, of the pancreas, of the brain, of the skin. So there were a lot of these observations that slowly showed up in the scientific literature in the early 2000s. And when we looked at this, I say we, my colleague Gitte Jensen and I, when we looked at this, we were sort of surprised, because the initial reaction was a little bit to say that it was exceptional for these stem cells to become cells of these different tissues. And to me, it was more like, well, if you see a caterpillar and then you see butterflies, and one day you see that the caterpillar is what becomes the butterfly, and the butterfly and all butterflies come from caterpillar, then instead of saying it's something exceptional, then I think the conclusion is to understand that all caterpillars become butterflies. And in that way, to understand that basically stem cells not only can become cells of various tissues, but they do. And not only they do, but if they are capable and they're doing it, then it must be their natural function. So we published an article in a journal called Medical Hypotheses. And in that article, we basically just proposed that stem cells, actually their main function was to constitute the natural repair system of the body. And today we fast forward 15, 18 years later, and that's what it is. It is very well established, very well documented. What I mean by very well documented, I mean several hundred scientific studies and scientific publications document various aspects of this whole process. So if I describe it here, sorry, there's no slide and visual support for it, but follow the story in your head. If anytime you have an injury in any tissue in your body, and a lot of the research done on this to document the process have been done with heart attack, with stroke, with the bone fracture, with a cut to the skin. So whenever you have an injury or something is not working properly in the body, the affected tissue will release compounds that will circulate everywhere in the bloodstream, but that includes going through your bone marrow. So when these compounds reach the bone marrow, they trigger the release of stem cells from the bone marrow. So the number of stem cells in circulation will increase 3 to 10 times within 3 to 5 days. As this is all taking place, on the second day, the affected tissue will also start to release other compounds locally that will attract these stem cells in circulation. It will attract them to that very location where there is a problem. So as stem cells circulate in the fine capillaries of the affected tissue, when they circulate in the fine capillaries where we have the problem, then the stem cells will leave the blood circulation, migrate in the tissue, and upon contact with cellular debris of that tissue, stem cells will multiply and then will transform into cells of that tissue. So this is your repair system. It's the same thing as, it works in a similar fashion as your immune system. If you cut yourself and you have an infection, immune cells are released, they circulate everywhere, but they end up exactly where you have the infection to kill the bacteria. It's the same process. They circulate everywhere and they end up wherever you have a problem or an injury to repair the problem or the injury. Now, in all this process, there are many steps. We release stem cells, they circulate, they migrate into tissue, they multiply, they transform into cells of that tissue. Of all these steps, the step that has been shown to be the most relevant, or I should say, it has been the most studied. I cannot say it's the most relevant. If we release stem cells, then they must be able to migrate into tissue to do their job. But the process of migration has not been studied a lot. The part that has been studied the most is the release of stem cells from the bone marrow, and the consequence of this is an increase in the number of circulating stem cells. So a lot of studies have studied the link between the number of stem cells in circulation and health. And if we look at that relationship, the conclusion, I'm skipping here the studies. I mean, there's so many studies and I don't have the PowerPoint support, but the conclusion is that more stem cells in circulation means that they're available to participate to the process of tissue repair. So you've got two individuals with the same type of problem. I take an example here, a bone fracture. Two people with the same problem, and I'm not making any claims here that RevitaBlu has an effect on bone fracture. I'm using information coming from the scientific literature to provide some information about stem cells, what they are, what they do, how they work. So if you got two people with the same problem, let's say a bone fracture, the individual that has more stem cells in circulation will repair better. We all have stem cells in our circulation. We all have a different number, like we have a different number of red blood cells, of white blood cells, and that range can be pretty vast. So people with more stem cells just repair better. Also, another conclusion, if you have, or anyone has a problem, if there's a way of putting more stem cells in circulation, then the body has the capacity of using these stem cells for repair. So we can also repair better. And there's a third conclusion, which to me is probably the most important for what it means in our lives, because we spend most of our lives without an injury or without the main problem. You know, we spend our lives, every single day of our lives, maintaining our health, just continuing in our lives and maintaining our health. And what has been discovered is that not only stem cells migrate in tissues that are in need of repair, but to a lesser extent, they also migrate every day into various tissues just to maintain them. So we lose cells on one hand, and on the other hand, we replace cells. And the novel understanding of health maintenance or disease formation is to understand that health is a balance. It's a balance between two phenomena in the body. On one hand, we lose cells. On the other hand, we replace the cells that have been lost with stem cells. If we lose more cells than we can replace, there you go, Luigi, you found that we found my presentation. Thank you so much. So you'll have to keep moving forward. I'll tell you when you are at the slide here where I am, although I'm not sure if, there you go, stop there. These slides have been removed from that presentation. So you can stay on that one. So to understand that health is a balance between two phenomena. Really losing cells in our various tissues, which we do every day. It's just a natural process. You know, we have the seasons, leaves fall from trees, cells die from tissue. It's just a normal process. And what replaces these cells is stem cells. When we're young, we have a lot of stem cells. We can repair these tissues, so we are healthy, we stay healthy. But as we age, we have fewer and fewer stem cells, so we cross a point in our lives when the number of stem cells is just too low in the bloodstream, naturally, in some individuals, too low to properly and effectively compensate for cellular loss. So a very simple analogy is like your bank account. If you spend money every month, and you do, as long as you've got an income that can meet these expenses, you're totally fine. The problem starts to develop if your income declines, and one day you don't have enough income to match your expenses. You can continue to work for some time, but there's a moment where you get into a situation where you're bankrupt, which would be compared to, let's say, a disease. So there's a point when you've lost enough cells that's in your pancreas where, well, it's diabetes, or you know, every single problem, health problem, is the consequence of cellular loss in one type of tissue. So health is the ability to maintain that balance, so you can have enough stem cells in circulation to match the natural cellular loss that is taking place. So the third conclusion is that fewer stem cells in circulation has been documented to be sort of a common denominator for people who developed health problems. If you take people that have developed various health problems linked to the heart, to the lung, to the kidney, to the pancreas, to the brain, to your overall cardiovascular system. And then we compare the number of stem cells found in these individuals to the number of stem cells found in healthy people. We see that we have a little bit less than half the number of stem cells found in people who have developed health problems. So I'm just summarizing here briefly the information, but the conclusion to keep in mind, and I don't have the ability here to show all the science, but it is very, very well documented how many stem cells circulation and the ability of the body to repair and maintain its own health. More stem cells in circulation means that more stem cells are available to be used by the body to repair and maintain various tissues. So once we understand that very clearly, the big question is, what can we do to increase the number of stem cells in circulation? So if you go to the next slide, we circle back to where I started all this research more than 20 years ago. I was working with this plant. It is a blue-green algae, Aphanisum aqua, in short AFA. And people were experiencing a broad variety of health benefits, benefits touching the heart, the lung, the pancreas, the liver, the skin, joints, the brain, so many different aspects of human health that the question, and I was leading the research on this plant, but I had a team. And the question, and we talked about this many times, what is it that this plant can be doing in the body that would lead to such a broad variety of health benefits that have been experienced by many people? So we did a lot of different studies. We got good data, but nothing that really explained really how the product worked until these observations that stem cells could become cells of various tissues. That's why we proposed that stem cells, it looked like at the time, stem cells really constituted the natural repair system. And our thought was that if that is true, then what if this plant worked by releasing stem cells from the bone marrow? By putting more stem cells in circulation, the body is more capable to naturally repair, and it would explain why various people experienced various kinds of benefits. So we went to the lab, we tested it, and we found that that's what this plant does. 1 hour after consumption, we have more stem cells in circulation. So after discovering what this plant was doing, it was clear to me that it could not be the only plant that has an effect on stem cells. Just like when we discover a plant that is an antioxidant or that has an effect on stem cells, it's not the only one. Over the years, we've found many others. So there has to be other plants. So the idea was to look back and try to find plants that have locally, globally, or locally, but most of the time locally, because they're less known, what kind of plant have been documented locally to have a broad variety of health benefits. And that kind of quest led us to the next ingredient, the next slide, Luigi, which is sea buckthorn berry, coming from the Tibetan plateau. And I say from the Tibetan plateau because sea buckthorn originates from there, but it has spread in many, many places in the world. But it is really in the type of environment that we find on the Tibetan plateau: high altitude, harsh winters, harsh drought, a lot of sun exposure. In those kinds of situation, that the sea buckthorn berry grows with a lot of bioactive compounds in it. But the story of sea buckthorn is interesting. Its name is Ipophae. In science, most of the time when we name a plant, it is named according to its physical characteristics, not its benefits. But here with sea buckthorn, Ipophae means, hippo means horse, phae means light. It means shining horse. And it's Alexander the Great traveling during his conquest in Western China. At some point, he abandoned a herd of horses wounded in battle and led them to die in a field of sea buckthorn. And when he came back a few weeks later, he found a herd of healthy, vibrant horses with a shining coat, which is a sign of health for a horse. So he brought then back this berry in Greece, and it's been used for centuries with horses. But also the same thing was reported with Genghis Khan. So from this, sea buckthorn was included into Tibetan medicine, Chinese medicine, Mongolian medicine, where it is used for the heart, for the overall cardiovascular system, for pancreatic function, for the lung, for skin repair when someone has an injury. So when we start to look at the things for which it is being used, to me, it's telling me it's very likely that this product has an effect on stem cells. So we derived an extract that we tested in the lab, and we found that indeed it increases the number of stem cells in circulation. So if you go to the next slide, Luigi, we won't go through all these ingredients, but RevitaBlu is essentially a blend of ingredients that have all been documented to support the natural release of stem cells from the bone marrow. I say support the natural release because we do release stem cells every day. Stem cells, once they are released, will be in the bloodstream for anywhere, let's say, between 1 to 6 hours. They circulate and they migrate either in a tissue or they go back to the bone marrow. So the fact that we have a constant number of stem cells in the bloodstream means that we have a constant release of stem cells. So these ingredients simply sort of enhance that release and helps the body put more stem cells in circulation. So that's essentially what RevitaBlu does. And go to the next slide, Luigi. One of the, and I'll leave it with that, one of the amazing things that I think with Jeunesse and RevitaBlu is that when I was working on this product, Dr. Donna Antar, a good friend of mine, she is the medical doctor with Jeunesse in charge of product development. And she told me, you've got to go and read about the other products that are already existing in Jeunesse, because you will see that they will work very, very well with RevitaBlu. So I went to study these products. First, I discovered, like all of you know, and if you don't, please hear this, these are all science-based products. They're based on very, very solid science. You don't have a lot of companies that have products with so much science, number one. Number two, they are products with top quality ingredients. You may find people sometimes showing you a bottle and then you read the ingredients and they'll tell you, you see, we have the same ingredients in our product. We need to understand there is a vast difference in quality of ingredients. You can have the same ingredients called exactly the same way, documented in the same way on a certificate of analysis, but when you really analyze the ingredients, it is a very, very different quality, sometimes not even comparable. So not only are they top quality ingredients, but they're also, so not only are they top quality products with a lot of science, but top quality ingredients as well. But what really impressed me is that when you release stem cells, there's a lot of things that you can do from there to support the role of these stem cells in the body. Releasing them is just one aspect. Remember the various steps. Once they're released, they need to circulate, they need to migrate. There's a lot of steps in this whole process. One of the things that can prevent or diminish the ability of stem cells to find their way and migrate exactly where they are needed or where they are most needed in the body is oxidative stress and systemic inflammation. So you want to be able to manage oxidative stress, reduce oxidative stress in the body, bring more of a healthy inflammation in the body, and that's what you have with Reserve. Reserve contains resveratrol and a lot of fruit extract that have all been documented to bring very, very significant antioxidant protection in the body. So when you release stem cells with RevitaBlu, you put more stem cells in circulation. They will do their job. When you take Reserve, it will do its effect. It will do its job in terms of an antioxidant. But when you combine them together, then you still have both the effect of both products, but the Reserve will really amplify and enhance what RevitaBlu will do. So use these products together. And I will not go through this right now, but there is a synergy similar to this one with virtually any of the core products that we find in the Jeunesse product line. Infinity with Reveal, AMPM, Nara, blend them. My message here is play with these products, take them together, and then you will see very, very good benefits. So that's what I wanted to share with you, Luigi. I hope it was not too heavy without proper slide support, but you did come to the rescue toward the end. So thank you so much.
Thanks to you, Christian. I have just a couple of questions, if you don't mind, just a couple of minutes more.
Sure.
First one is how is the best way to take this kind of product? So, I mean, when is the best moment during the day? You suggest to use with after a meal, before a meal, during a meal. What's the best?
I would say the best is probably on an empty stomach, which would mean before a meal. It also contains some biochemistry coming from AFA, some ingredients in AFA that can, in certain people, reduce appetite. So if you want to manage your weight, then the product can help in some ways. So I would say before meal on an empty stomach. But if it doesn't work for you to do it that way, over the years, we have seen people taking the product in all kinds of ways. And I cannot say here that I have seen anything emerging to show that there are better results by taking it at one time or another in the day. So I would say if you take it more than once a day, and it's good to take it more than once a day, just spread it in the day. Before your meal is great. If it is with your meal, it's fine.
So maybe one in the morning, One before the lunch and the other before the dinner should be fine to begin.
Perfect.
Wow. Well, thank you, Christian. I have my chat board full of questions for you, but I think we should arrange another session with you in the near future when you are more comfortable, when you are not in a hurry, traveling so far from your home, and with this crazy schedule, it will be nice to have you again in this webinar. And I really appreciate what you have done tonight for us, because the science behind this product, it's really incredible. Congratulations for have studied this amazing product and for have put this amazing product in the hands of our Genes family. It will be a weapon to boost the sales and to rank advance and to put the business to the next level. Thank you very much, Christian.
My pleasure, Luigi. You know, we didn't have the time here to go through all the science, but when the science is understood, this is a product that, I mean, in Genes, all the people, the distributors are pioneers in bringing forth. Think of the antioxidant wave. You know, antioxidants were discovered in the 50s, then brought to the marketplace in the 80s. But it's only in the 1990s, early 2000, that antioxidant, look at Genes with Reserve, that it became a real force in the marketplace. Think if Genes was the company in the 80s that had started the wave. We have the same thing here. This understanding of stem cells is going to change the way that we look at health and wellness. And Genes, basically, you have the platform here to be the pioneers in bringing that forth and reap all the benefits from it. So I think we have a brilliant future here.
It's a kind of category creator product. You really did a great job. And again, thank you very much, Christian, for having been with us. Enjoy your day, because